Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel, Wonder with God. If you're new here, my name is AJ and I come on this platform to share revelations that the Lord gives me as I'm growing into a deeper relationship with Him. So today we will be continuing our discussion, part 2, that is, of Unwrapping Godly Hope. Now, if you did not look at the previous video, I highly recommend it because it really lays the foundation of what we'll be discussing today. But to recap briefly, we touched on the fact that God willingly wants to give us the gift of hope. But this gift is something that we cannot passively accept. We have to activate it. And we talked about the batteries needed to activate hope. And we found them in Psalms 33, verses 20 and 21. And the first battery being trusting in the name of the Lord, and the other one being waiting. Because we cannot have hope without some element of time. We dove deeply into what it means to trust in the name of the Lord. Last time today, we'll be talking about waiting. And I will say that this is going to be a very meaty discussion. There's a lot of verses that I'll be referencing, and you'll see my eyes shift because I have the verses to the side and I want to make sure I get everything. So if you see that, just bear with me. I ain't crazy, okay? But I just wanted to let you know that. So because it's so meaty, we're really just going to streamline this into what to do and not do while we are waiting in whatever we are hoping God to come through for us on. All right, so in preparation for this discussion, the first verse that I came across was Romans 12, verse 12. Now, just to give you some context on the full chapter of this passage, Paul is giving instructions on how to live a godly life. So please make sure that even though I'm referencing this in the context of waiting, all of these points are just important for us to have in our day-to-day lives. All right, so let's go ahead and read that. It says, rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, and steadfast in prayer. All right, so this is a very short verse, but there's a lot to unpack here. So the first thing, rejoice in hope. If I'm being honest, while I'm waiting on something from God, again, depending on how long I'm waiting, I can't say that rejoicing is my go-to state of being or attitude. And rejoice here means to be cheerful, be glad, have joy. I mean, let's be real. That's not necessarily, again, my go-to spot. But what this is teaching me is that even though that may not be my natural inclination, this is something that I have to choose to have. This is an attitude that I have to adopt. All right, let's go on to the next part. Patient in tribulation. So, while we wait, there'll likely be some obstacles, some challenges, even some traps from the devil to frustrate us and to get us to give up. And what is so key when we face these tribulations is to have the heart posture of patience. And patience here means to persevere under misfortunes or trials. And it actually is the same Greek word used for endure in James 5:11. So in that verse, it says, we count those blessed who endure. And blessed means to be endowed with God's favor, protection, and consecration. So when you put being patient in tribulation and we count those blessed who endure together, what can we expect? We can expect that when we have that heart posture of patience, when God sees that we're actively trying and we're willing to have that heart posture, He will give us a portion of His favor to make it through, to keep showing up, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, no matter how difficult the circumstance is. God willingly wants to help us out during this process. All right. Moving on. The last phrase in this verse, it says steadfast in prayer. So again, steadfast here means to persevere and to faint not in prayer. And when I heard this, it brought to mind Matthew 7:7, and you guys read it in the New Living Translation because I love how straight and plain it is, and I'm going to read it really quickly. It says in that verse, keep on asking and you will receive what you ask. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open to you. It didn't say stop asking, stop seeking, stop knocking, even though you don't see what you're waiting on. It doesn't even talk about your circumstances in this verse. No matter their circumstance, the Lord wants us to keep coming back to Him. It also kind of reminds me of the parable of the persistent widow who was trying to get justice from her adversaries. She didn't let that stop her, and the fact that this was an unjust judge that was listening to her request, she was persistent. And God also wants us to be persistent. All right, so let's go on to the next point of what you should do while waiting. If you turn to Philippians 4, verse 6 through 7, the verse is a very widely known verse. We'll go ahead and read it. It says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. So that was verse 6. So let's unpack this one too. I love the fact that this verse begins with a command. Be anxious for nothing. It kind of similar to what I was saying earlier, like while I'm waiting, I'm not the most peaceful, restful person. I'm a little antsy. But here, what God really desires from us is when we come to Him, He wants us to be at peace. He wants us to have calmness. He doesn't want us to be frantic and worried and burnt out and stressful. He wants us to come in confidence to Him. He wants us to be rest assured that whatever we are bringing at His feet, He has already taken care of it. So the verse goes on to say, everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Okay, let's stop there. So again, we see that theme of prayer come up again. We need to make sure that we are in constant communication with God, that we're going to Him consistently throughout our waiting journey and just in life in general. He wants that communion with us. And let's make sure though, while we are going to Him and giving our supplications, we need to give room for God to talk to us too. Our prayer life shouldn't just be one-sided, us telling God this, that, Lord, He said, she did, like it's not us just talking at Him. He also wants to talk with us. So give room for Him to converse with you too. Okay, that was just a side note. Let's go back to it. So it says everything prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Okay, y'all. Thanksgiving is that special sauce. Okay, you should not go to prayer and supplication without giving God His glory, His praise, and worship. That's what Thanksgiving means. And why is Thanksgiving so important? So I thought it was really interesting. When I was reading Leviticus, there is a specific offering that was referenced, and it's a grain offering. And the grain offering actually symbolized thanksgiving. And this offering was completely voluntarily. So an Israelite was going to offer this whenever they felt moved or compelled to give God His praise, glory, and honor. So it wasn't for an atonement of sin. It wasn't to make right with the neighbor or some judgment. This was just an expression of gratitude to God. And would you know that in Leviticus 2 verse 3, it says that this is the most holy of offerings, burnt offerings. And so, if it was the most important back then, most holy, don't you think it's the most holy now? Though we may not be giving a physical thing, but it will be giving our voice, our sound, our song, our praise. It is so important because this is a sacrifice to God. This is showing God that we trust Him. It is reflection of our trust, and it will be evident in how we praise and worship Him. So don't you dare go to God without thanksgiving, okay? Just don't do that. All right, let's go on to the next part of the verse. In verse 7, in the peace, before that, let your request be made to known. And then verse 7, in the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. While we are waiting for God, we shall seek His peace. And what does peace here mean? That means safety, protection, welfare, tranquility. God wants to give us His rest. So we should seek His peace, and not the peace that the world says we need to have, but His godly peace. All right, so let's go on to the next thing that we should do. And this time is a theme. I'm going to categorize this as a theme. We need to seek daily renewal. And there's two types of renewal I'm going to refer to. Let's go first to Isaiah 40, verse 31. It says, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So the word renew here in Hebrew means to go forward, to strike through, to sprout up. And it's like, okay, let me think about this now in this context of the verse. So when we wait on God, when we are actively seeking Him for renewal of our strength, that means we're pulling from His source of strength for us to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, to be steadfast, as those previous verses said. And the other renewal can be found in Psalms 51, verse 10. It says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Now, renew here is a little different. It means to restore, to make new, to repair. And here, this is essentially telling us that we should be asking God to do something new in us. Yes, it says, create in me a clean heart. Lord, make my heart like yours. Make it after me. And I will say, during the waiting season, God will do a work in us if we ask and allow Him to. And so when I put these two together, these two renewals together, this is what I get. The renewal is that we are drawing on God's strength to keep moving, to keep forward, to keep putting one step in front of the other. And while we do that, He is doing something in our heart to prepare us for whatever, in alignment with His will, whatever we are hoping Him to come through. The Lord wants to make sure we are prepared for what we are asking for. He doesn't want it to become an idol for us. He doesn't want it to be burdensome for us. He wants to make sure that we have the capacity and the endurance for the responsibility of whatever we are requesting from Him. And I love that in the same chapter, it also goes on to verse 12. It says, restore to me the joy of your salvation and uphold me by your generous spirit. So yes, we want God to do this renewal in us, but let's go back to that theme of joy. To me, this is showing that even though joy may not be our first or natural inclination to accept or to have an attitude of while we wait, that's okay. We can ask God to give it to us because He wants to give it to us. That will help us to persevere, to stay fast. His joy will help us through that. So it's okay. If you don't have it, ask for it. And I love also the fact that it says, uphold me. So while we're waiting, we shouldn't try to be upholding ourselves or leaning on our own understanding or have self sufficiency. We need to make sure that we are leaning on God, that He is the one supporting us and not our own knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. No, we need His godly wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. All right, so that wraps up what we should do while we wait. So let's go ahead and stop here, and I will do a part 3 of the what not to do while you're waiting. All right, y'all, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.